Today, we begin our reading of the book of Exodus in Book 1 of the Narrative Reading Bible, Paths to Promise, Genesis to Deuteronomy. Enjoy the reading.
Introduction to Exodus. The book of Exodus plays a crucial role in the Bible's metanarrative, focusing on the redemption of the Israelites and the development of their covenantal relationship with God. Through the story of Exodus, themes of deliverance, divine covenant, worship, and God's abiding presence are explored, foreshadowing the ultimate redemption that would come through Jesus Christ. The book is divided into two major sections, each highlighting key events that reveal God's faithfulness and transformative power. The fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham to make his descendants a great nation, and the establishment of a covenant at Mount Sinai that defines Israel's identity and purpose. The first section, chapters 1 through 18, details how the Israelites' situation in Egypt fulfills God's covenantal promise to Abraham. This promise, first made in Genesis, included that Abraham's descendants would live in a foreign land, endure enslavement and oppression for 400 years, and ultimately be delivered by God with great wealth. In Exodus, this theme of redemption is central as God intervenes to save his people from bondage. A pivotal example of God's active role in humanity's story and a precursor to spiritual redemption. The narrative opens with the Israelites in Egypt, now a populous people, becoming enslaved under a new pharaoh who fears their numbers and potential power. This oppression signifies the fallen state of humanity under sin's bondage and separation from God, a condition that requires divine intervention. Amid this darkness, Moses is born and miraculously saved by Pharaoh's daughter, growing up within the very empire that enslaved his people. After fleeing to Midian, Moses encounters God in the burning bush, where God calls him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, symbolizing God's initiative in pursuing redemption. Moses and his brother Aaron confront Pharaoh with God's command to release the Israelites, but Pharaoh's repeated refusals bring about a series of 10 plagues that showcase God's power and his judgment against Egypt's gods. These plagues demonstrate God's authority over creation and his ability to bring both judgment and deliverance, setting the stage for the final plague, the death of the firstborn. Here, the institution of the Passover becomes a key redemptive act, as God passes over the houses marked with lamb's blood, sparing them from death, a direct foreshadowing of Jesus, the Lamb of God, whose sacrifice would bring ultimate redemption. After the final plague, Pharaoh releases the Israelites, and they cross the Red Sea in a miraculous act of deliverance. This crossing marks a decisive moment in the story of redemption, symbolizing the complete break from bondage and the start of a new journey. In the wilderness, the Israelites experience God's provision through manna, quail, and water from a rock, all of which reveal God's faithfulness and care. Additionally, their victory over the Amalekites and the Council of Jethro showcase God's ongoing guidance and support, reinforcing the theme of divine presence and protection as they journey toward the Promised Land. The second section, chapters 19 to 40, centers on the revelation, confirmation, breaking, and renewal of the covenant between God and Israel. At Mount Sinai, God reveals himself to the Israelites in a powerful theophany, demonstrating both his holiness and desire for relationship with his people. Here, God gives the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments serve as the cornerstone of the covenant between God and Israel, providing foundational principles that shape Israel's identity as a nation set apart for God. These commandments do more than establish a legal framework. They encapsulate the moral and spiritual values that define Israel's relationship with God and with each other. The commandments are structured in two main sections, reflecting the dual focus of the covenant: love for God and love for others. The first half of the commandments, including directives against idolatry, misuse of God's name, and commands to honor the Sabbath, focuses on cultivating an undivided love and reverence for God. They address Israel's call to exclusive loyalty and worship of God, emphasizing that he alone is worthy of their devotion. This part of the covenant establishes the foundation for a faithful relationship, guiding Israel to recognize God as their ultimate authority, sustainer, and sanctifier. By placing God first, these commandments instruct Israel to orient their lives around a deep and active reverence, marking them as a people wholly devoted to God. The second half of the commandments, which includes instructions against murder, adultery, theft, false witness, and covetousness, focuses on how to honor and love others within the community. These commandments establish essential principles of justice, respect, and empathy, creating a society that values human dignity and harmony. They highlight the importance of treating others with integrity and compassion, embodying the love that flows from a right relationship with God. By protecting each individual's rights and promoting a spirit of generosity and honesty, these laws foster a communal life where each person reflects God's love in their interactions. Together, the Ten Commandments form a holistic guide for righteous living, calling Israel to love God with all their heart, soul, and strength, and to love their neighbor as themselves. In this way, they do not just serve as rules to follow, but as principles that shape the moral fabric of Israel, setting the stage for a covenant community that mirrors God's character and anticipates the deeper fulfillment of these laws through Jesus, who taught that the whole of God's law rests on these two commands, to love God and to love others. This covenant marks a critical milestone in God's plan of restoration, setting Israel apart as a people uniquely dedicated to Him and defined by holiness, obedience, and a deep commitment to His ways. In forging this covenant, God not only establishes a legal and moral framework for Israel, but also imbues the nation with a sacred identity and purpose. Israel is called to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, Exodus 19:6, embodying God's character and serving as a beacon to other nations. This calling to holiness and obedience is not a superficial distinction. It transforms Israel into a living example of what it means to walk in fellowship with God, reflecting His justice, mercy, and love in every aspect of life. Moreover, the covenantal relationship that God establishes with Israel goes beyond a national agreement. It reflects God's ultimate commitment to restoring humanity to a state of close fellowship with Him. By entering into a covenant with Israel, God reveals His desire to bring humanity back to the intimacy that was lost in the fall, when sin disrupted the harmony between Creator and creation. Israel's covenant, therefore, is not only about Israel's relationship with God, it serves as a model of the reconciliation God intends for all people. Through Israel, God demonstrates His unwavering faithfulness and His willingness to bridge the gap that sin has created, offering humanity a glimpse of the restored relationship that will one day be fulfilled in Christ. It foreshadows the new covenant that would be established through Jesus, in which people from every nation, not only Israel, would be invited into restored fellowship with God. As Israel is set apart to live as God's people under His guidance, they become a prototype of the broader restoration God envisions for all creation, a restored community in which humanity lives in faithful relationship with God, aligning their lives with His will and embodying His love. God then gives Moses precise instructions for building the tabernacle, a portable sanctuary that would house His presence among His people. The tabernacle is more than a physical structure. It symbolizes God's desire to restore the broken relationship with humanity by dwelling among them, even in their journey through the wilderness. The design of the tabernacle, including the Ark of the Covenant, the altar, and the priestly garments, emphasizes the importance of worship, reverence, and holiness. Each element points to the careful approach required to draw near to God, reflecting both His holiness and humanity's need for mediation due to the separation introduced by sin. The tabernacle signifies a partial restoration of the close relationship lost in the fall, as God makes His presence both known and accessible in a visible, tangible way. In establishing this sanctuary, God not only provides a physical dwelling place, but initiates a structured way for Israel to engage in reverent worship and experience His guidance and provision. The Ark of the Covenant within the Holy of Holies represents God's throne and serves as the focal point of His presence, while the altar and sacrificial system offer a means of purification, allowing Israel to approach Him despite their sin. The consecrated priests wearing holy garments intercede on behalf of the people, demonstrating that although the full restoration is yet to come, God desires to meet His people where they are and journey with them. This structure and ritual foreshadow the ultimate mediation through Jesus Christ, who would later remove the barriers between God and humanity, granting direct access to God. When the Israelites complete the tabernacle according to God's instructions, the book of Exodus concludes with the glory of the Lord filling the sanctuary. This divine indwelling is a powerful affirmation of God's acceptance, signaling His abiding commitment to Israel as His covenant people. The glory of the Lord within the tabernacle reveals that God is not a distant deity, transcendent, but is present among his people, immanent, sharing in their journey and guiding them toward the promised land. This indwelling also prefigures the ultimate plan of restoration, where God's presence would not only dwell among his people, but within them, first through Christ, who tabernacled among us, and ultimately through the Holy Spirit, dwelling in the hearts of believers. The tabernacle thus serves as both a tangible promise and a prophetic foreshadowing. It reminds Israel that God is actively working to restore humanity to himself, pointing toward the future hope of complete restoration when, as envisioned in Revelation, the dwelling place of God is with man. Through the tabernacle, God demonstrates his unwavering commitment to lead his people back into full communion with him, anticipating the day when separation will be overcome, and he will dwell with his people in perfect unity in the new creation. Exodus. The Israelites multiply in Egypt. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah; Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin; Dan and Naphtali; Gad and Asher. The descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all, including Joseph, who was already in Egypt. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were fruitful and increased rapidly. They multiplied and became exceedingly numerous, so that the land was filled with them. Then a new king, who did not know Joseph, came to power in Egypt. "Look," he said to his people, "the Israelites have become too numerous and too powerful for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase even more. And if a war breaks out, they may join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country." So the Egyptians appointed taskmasters over the Israelites to oppress them with forced labor. As a result, they built Pithom and Ramesses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and flourished. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. They worked the Israelites ruthlessly and made their lives bitter with hard labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. Every service they imposed was harsh. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, "When you help the Hebrew women give birth, observe them on the birth stools. If the child is a son, kill him. But if it is a daughter, let her live." The midwives, however, feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt had instructed. They let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before a midwife arrives." So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, "Every son born to the Hebrews you must throw into the Nile, but every daughter you may allow to live." Now a man of the house of Levi married a daughter of Levi, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got him a papyrus basket and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in the basket and set it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. And his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Soon the daughter of Pharaoh went down to bathe in the Nile, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. And when she saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maidservant to retrieve it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the little boy was crying. So she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call one of the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" "Go ahead," Pharaoh's daughter told her, and the girl went and called the boy's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay your wages." So the woman took the boy and nursed him. When the child had grown older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, and explained, "I drew him out of the water." One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his own people and observed their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. After looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. The next day Moses went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you attacking your companion?" But the man replied, "Who made you ruler and judge over us?" Are you planning to kill me, as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "This thing I have done has surely become known." When Pharaoh heard about this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, where he sat down beside a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. And when some shepherds came along and drove them away, Moses rose up to help them, and watered their flock. When the daughters returned to their father Reuel, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds," they replied. "He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "So where is he?" their father asked. "Why did you leave the man behind? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. And she gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." After a long time the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned and cried out under their burden of slavery, and their cry for deliverance from bondage ascended to God. So God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the Israelites and took notice. Meanwhile, Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from within a bush. Moses saw the bush ablaze with fire, but it was not consumed. So Moses thought, "I must go over and see this marvelous sight. Why is the bush not burning up?" When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called out to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." "Here I am," he answered. "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the affliction of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their oppressors, and I am aware of their sufferings. I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen how severely the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people the Israelites out of Egypt." But Moses asked God, "Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" "I will surely be with you," God said, "and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, all of you will worship God on this mountain." Then Moses asked God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' What should I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." God also told Moses, "Say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is how I am to be remembered in every generation. Go, assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, "The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me and said, I have surely attended to you, and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised to bring you up out of your affliction in Egypt, into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to what you say, and you must go with them to the king of Egypt and tell him, "The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Now please let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not allow you to go, unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand, and strike the Egyptians, with all the wonders I will perform among them. And after that, he will release you. And I will grant this people such favor in the sight of the Egyptians that when you leave, you will not go away empty-handed. Every woman shall ask her neighbor, and any woman staying in her house for silver and gold jewelry and clothing, and you will put them on your sons and daughters. So you will plunder the Egyptians." Then Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to my voice? for they may say, 'The Lord has not appeared to you.'" And the Lord asked him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. "Throw it on the ground," said the Lord. So Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. "Stretch out your hand and grab it by the tail," the Lord said to Moses, who reached out his hand and caught the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. "This is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you." Furthermore, the Lord said to Moses, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So he put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous, white as snow. "Put your hand back inside your cloak," said the Lord. So Moses put his hand back inside his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored, like the rest of his skin. And the Lord said, "If they refuse to believe you, or heed the witness of the first sign, they may believe that of the second. But if they do not believe even these two signs, or listen to your voice, take some water from the Nile, and pour it on the dry ground. Then the water you take from the Nile will become blood on the ground." "Please, Lord," Moses replied, "I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and tongue." And the Lord said to him, "Who gave man his mouth? Or who makes the mute or the deaf, the sighted or the blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you as you speak, and I will teach you what to say." But Moses replied, "Please, Lord, send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord burned against Moses, and he said, "Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well, and he is now on his way to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You are to speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I will help both of you to speak, and I will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you. He will be your spokesman, and it will be as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand, so you can perform signs with it." Then Moses went back to his father-in-law Jethro and said to him, "Please let me return to my brothers in Egypt to see if they are still alive." "Go in peace," Jethro replied. Now the Lord had said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all the men who sought to kill you are dead." So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and headed back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God in his hand. The Lord instructed Moses, "When you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders that I have put within your power. But I will harden his heart, so that he will not let the people go. Then tell Pharaoh that this is what the Lord says. Israel is my firstborn son, and I told you to let my son go so that he may worship me. But since you have refused to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son." Now at a lodging place along the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched it to Moses' feet. "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me," she said. So the Lord let him alone. When she said, "Bridegroom of blood," she was referring to the circumcision. Meanwhile, the Lord had said to Aaron, "Go and meet Moses in the wilderness." So he went and met Moses at the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron everything the Lord had sent him to say, and all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron relayed everything the Lord had said to Moses. And Moses performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord had attended to the Israelites and had seen their affliction, they bowed down and worshipped. After that, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh replied, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." "The God of the Hebrews has met with us," they answered. "Please let us go on a 3-day journey into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword." But the king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why do you draw the people away from their work? Get back to your labor." Pharaoh also said, "Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you would be stopping them from their labor." That same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, You shall no longer supply the people with straw for making bricks. They must go and gather their own straw, but require of them the same quota of bricks as before. Do not reduce it, for they are lazy. That is why they are crying out, 'Let us go and sacrifice to our God.' Make the work harder on the men, so they will be occupied, and pay no attention to these lies." So the taskmasters and foremen of the people went out and said to them, "This is what Pharaoh says, I am no longer giving you straw. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your workload will in no way be reduced." So the people scattered all over the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters kept pressing them, saying, "Fulfill your quota each day, just as you did when straw was provided." Then the Israelite foremen, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over the people, were beaten and asked, "Why have you not fulfilled your quota of bricks yesterday or today, as you did before?" So the Israelite foreman went and appealed to Pharaoh. "Why are you treating your servants this way? No straw has been given to your servants, yet we are told, 'Make bricks.' Look, your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people." "You are slackers," Pharaoh replied. "Slackers! That is why you keep saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get to work. You will be given no straw, yet you must deliver the full quota of bricks." The Israelite foremen realized they were in trouble when they were told, "You must not reduce your daily quota of bricks." When they left Pharaoh, they confronted Moses and Aaron, who stood waiting to meet them. "May the Lord look upon you and judge you," the foreman said, "for you have made us a stench before Pharaoh and his officials. You have placed in their hand a sword to kill us." So Moses returned to the Lord and asked, "Lord, why have you brought trouble upon this people? Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not delivered your people in any way."